If I had to boil down my relationship with my sister into one line, it would be this. She's the kind of person who'll smile warmly as she pulls the chair out from under you, then somehow twist the story so everyone believes you fell because you weren't paying attention. I'm Kyle, 38 years old, and confrontation has never been my style. I'm the let-it-go guy, the one who avoids conflict so quietly that people assume I don't have a backbone, though I remember every snide remark, every disguised insult, every time I was told I was making a big deal out of something that was actually very real. Lauren, my sister, is 41. On the surface, she's the ideal suburban mom. Perfect teeth, matching holiday pajamas, Instagram-worthy, family photos that look straight out of a catalog. But underneath all that perfect polish is someone sharp, calculating, and honestly pretty mean whenever she thinks there's no audience to impress. Family events always seem to draw out that side of her. Or maybe they just reveal who she truly is. Growing up, she was the family superstar. Straight as, cheer squad captain, prom queen, the whole package. I was the quiet kid who spent weekends drawing, didn't care about sports, and would rather read than argue over who got the front seat. Our parents never openly favored her, but it was woven into everything. When she rear-ended someone, she was under pressure from school. When I bumped a car in college, I was reckless and not thinking about the future. Her slip-ups were understandable, mine were moral failings. I didn't realize how deep that imbalance went until after our dad passed. He wasn't perfect, but he held the family together. When he was gone, it was like someone ripped off the lid, keeping everything contained. Dinner plans became battles, invitations came with strings attached. And just when I'd think we were on equal footing, she'd do something sly and petty to remind me I wasn't. Still, I let it go, especially for my son Ben. He's 12 now, and the center of my world. Smart, funny, thoughtful. His mom and I split 5 years back peacefully, and since she moved overseas, Ben lives with me full-time. I never imagined single fatherhood would feel natural, but somehow, it does. Maybe because he makes it easy. He's the kind of kid who thanks waiters without being told, holds doors open, and writes his own thank you notes after parties. I don't know how I got so lucky. A few months ago, Lauren invited us to celebrate her twin's birthday at a casual but nice restaurant downtown. Nothing too fancy, she texted. Just dress decent, they have a dress code. That alone should have been the giveaway. Lauren doesn't do casual. I figured she picked it partly to impress her friends, but Ben enjoys spending time with his cousins, so we agreed to go. I even bought him a new button-down and grabbed myself a proper dress shirt because if there's one thing I hate, it's feeling out of place. Traffic that day was awful. We were 5 minutes late. 5. I apologized anyway as we walked in. The hostess gave us a warm smile and led us toward a glass-enclosed private dining area. Soft lighting, sleek decor, servers in tuxedo vests. Ben's eyes lit up. "This place is amazing," he whispered. "Can I get steak?" I told him he could get whatever he wanted. We followed the hostess in, and I spotted the table instantly. Lauren, her husband Paul, their twins, and another couple were already seated. The table was set for 8, 4 adults, 4 kids, all spots neatly arranged with folded napkins and little name cards. I slowed down, confused. My name wasn't anywhere. Before I could ask, Lauren looked up with her trademark. "Oh, I didn't see you there" expression. "Kyle," she said brightly. "I thought I mentioned we only booked for 8. I frowned. "You told me to come." "I did," she replied sweetly. "But we had to confirm numbers for the private room. It's limited seating, and with the twins' friends and their parents." She waved a hand as if that explained everything. "There's only room for 4. I looked around again. No extra chairs. No one attempting to make space, just 8 perfectly arranged seats, like it was some formal rehearsal dinner. Ben shifted next to me, clearly uncomfortable but trying to appear polite. Paul took a sip of wine and shrugged. "You should have checked in with us, dude." My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. "Right, okay." I could have confronted them, but something told me this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, a reminder, a power move, so I forced a smile, put my hand on Ben's shoulder, and guided him out of the room. The hostess caught sight of us wandering and asked gently if we needed anything. I explained the situation as neutrally as I could, and asked if there was an available table, somewhere quiet if possible. She paused, then nodded and said, "Let me speak with our manager." That's when we met Steve. Silver-haired, late 50s, dressed sharper than any manager I've ever seen, with the kind of calm authority that tells you he's the one who keeps the place running smoothly. I laid out the whole situation for Steve without defensiveness or drama, just the straightforward version of what happened, and his eyebrows pulled together. "So they invited you, but didn't reserve spots for you or your son," he repeated. "Apparently there was only room for 4, I said, mimicking air quotes. Steve studied me for a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. Give me 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, Ben and I were shown to a gorgeous booth on the opposite side of the restaurant. Deep leather cushions, a view of the fireplace, warm lighting, and a server who addressed us the way you'd greet very important person guests. I didn't know what string Steve pulled in the back, but it was obvious we weren't just being accommodated, we were being prioritized. I stayed composed, didn't approach Lauren's table, didn't cause a stir, but through the glass divider I could see her every so often. And each time she glanced up and spotted me relaxed, conversing with Steve, or joking with Ben, this little tension crept into her smile, like she couldn't stand that I wasn't sulking. Then the moment came that flipped the entire evening. Our server returned and said, "Mr. Kyle, the manager wanted you to know everything has been taken care of exactly as you discussed." He gave me a curious look. "What did you arrange?" I just smiled, because that was the moment I decided the night wasn't going to end with me quietly swallowing another insult. This time, I wasn't stepping aside or minimizing what happened. I had a plan now, and by dessert, it would all come together. Ben was sipping his lemonade through one of those metal straws when I saw Lauren lean toward Paul and whisper something. He glanced over at us and snorted into his drink. One of the twins, Noah, I think, twisted in his seat to stare until Lauren guided him back around like nothing was happening. The whole thing had that signature Lauren subtlety, just pointed enough to sting, but soft enough that if I reacted I'd look irrational. I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I lifted my hand in an easy little wave across the room like we were simply old acquaintances acknowledging each other from afar. As if on cue, Steve wandered by and noticed where I was looking. "Everything still all right here?" he asked, stealing a brief glance toward their table. "Perfect," I said. "Honestly, better than I expected." Ben beamed. "Dad, can I get the steak and the mac and cheese?" "Absolutely," I said. "Tonight we're celebrating." He tilted his head. "Celebrating what?" I smirked. "That we're not sitting over there." Sure, I could have brushed everything off yet again, written it off as just how Lauren is, and moved on like I always had. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the look Ben gave me earlier, uncertain, trying to be brave. Or maybe it was how effortlessly Lauren wielded her passive-aggressive cruelty, acting like humiliating me in front of my kid was no big deal. She's always been an expert at that razor-thin line, petty enough to hurt, vague enough to make me look unreasonable if I call it out. But this time, she hadn't just yanked the chair out from under me. She did it to Ben. And that crossed a line I wouldn't ignore. Dinner was fantastic. I let Ben order whatever he wanted. Our waiter, Michael, kept checking on us like we were his top priority. Midway through the meal, Steve stopped by and told me he had something special in mind for dessert if we were up for it. I told him absolutely. From the reflection in the glass behind Ben, I watched Lauren's table. Everyone looked cheerful. She kept darting glances at us, probably trying to figure out what I'd said to the manager, why we were being treated so well, why I wasn't sulking in a corner like she expected. But the real spark came with the cake. Lauren had arranged for a giant shared dessert for the twins, a chocolate volcano piled with brownies and fudge, topped with sparklers while a birthday tune played. The whole restaurant turned to watch. Ben looked over, impressed. "That's awesome," he murmured. "It definitely is," I agreed. Across the room, Lauren raised her champagne glass toward us and silently mouthed, "You missed out." Polished, smug, perfectly tailored to look polite to everyone but me. I didn't glare. I didn't shrink. I just nodded once, because that's when it fully clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She had planned every bit of it. The private room, the limited seats, the big show-stopping dessert. It was all part of her curated image. She wanted to show her friends she was the center of the universe, that she could freeze out her own brother without guilt, and still appear gracious. And I knew sooner or later she'd twist it into my fault. Steve returned just as they were finishing their spectacle. "Everything still good for you?" he asked. "Couldn't be better," I said. Then, leaning in slightly, added, "Hey, do you guys make custom desserts for events?" He raised an eyebrow. "We do. Would you like the menu?" I hesitated, then pointed subtly at Lauren's table. "Actually, how hard would it be to replicate that dessert? Just bigger. Same idea, but triple the size. Make it dramatic." Steve's mouth curled into a knowing grin. "I'll see what I can do." And with that, the final act was set. I figured that would be the end of it. A quiet counterpoint, a classy little reversal. No shouting match, no scene. Just a moment for her to feel exactly what she made us feel. Then things took an unexpected turn. Ben had gone to the restroom, and I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up, and there was Paul, wineglass dangling from his hand, wearing that trademark condescending smirk. "Didn't think you'd actually stay," he said. "You mean after you told me there weren't seats for us?" I replied. He chuckled like we were sharing a private joke. "Come on, man, it's not that serious. You know how Lauren gets with planning stuff. She's obsessed with her headcount spreadsheets. It's all logistics, nothing personal. Sure, I said calmly, just numbers. You could have said something though, he added with a lazy shrug. You could have asked for a couple chairs. Nobody was trying to exclude you. I stared at him. You told me I should have called ahead. Paul tipped his wine glass toward me. Well, yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to sit with us, you'd have made sure it happened, right? I had to force myself not to react. Ben came back just then, slowing when he noticed Paul hovering beside our table. Hi, Uncle Paul, he said politely. Paul gave him a casual nod. Hey there, kiddo. Then he shifted his weight, angled his body toward me, and lowered his voice so Ben couldn't catch the words. Listen, he murmured. I know you sometimes feel left out, but it really isn't intentional. Lauren just likes things orderly. You and Ben, well, you're a little unpredictable. I stared at him. Unpredictable? He rushed to soften. Not in a bad way, just not part of her usual plan. She likes everything mapped out so it looks perfect. Maybe next time just check in before you come. There it was again, check in. Like I was some distant relative who needed clearance to be included. As if I didn't belong unless I asked for permission. I rose from my seat slowly. Thanks for dropping by, Paul. Our dessert should be here any second. He shrugged like he'd tried his best, then sauntered back toward their table. As he sat down, Lauren leaned over and whispered something to him. Whatever he said back made her laugh, sharp, dismissive, confident. And that's when something deep inside me cracked open. It wasn't about that night. It wasn't even about the seating. It was every quiet dismissal over the years. Every holiday where Ben's gift was clearly an afterthought. Every accidental family trip we weren't invited to. Every time I was treated like the optional sibling. I remembered all of it, and, for once, I refused to bury it. The waiter returned then, pushing a cart so massive that 2 servers had to maneuver it through the aisle. On it sat a towering, absurdly extravagant 3-tier dessert display. Layers of molten chocolate, brownie columns, scoops of ice cream tucked between shards of caramel and dark chocolate. Strawberries coated in gold dust, and at the very top, a small edible plaque that read, "To the best dad and the coolest kid." Ben's eyes went huge. A wave of gasps spread through the restaurant. People pulled out their phones. Someone even started clapping. When the sparklers were lit around the base, it looked like a finale at a Vegas buffet. Across the room, Lauren went absolutely still. And then Steve materialized beside us, giving me a friendly pat on the shoulder. Enjoy, gentlemen, he said. It's on the house. I blinked. What? He smiled. Your story stuck with me. And honestly, it's refreshing to see a dad go all out for his kid. Consider it a manager's treat. I sat there stunned while Ben dove into the dessert, giggling, cheeks smeared with chocolate. Dad, this is amazing, he shouted. I couldn't help laughing. Yeah, buddy, it really is. Lauren didn't come over, not once, but she didn't need to. Her expression said everything, the clench, head jaw, the tight grip on her purse, the flicker of panic when she realized the spotlight had shifted, and she wasn't the one commanding the room anymore. But the true twist? That came when the bill arrived, not ours, hers, because what Lauren apparently hadn't bothered to check was the restaurant's policy for private dining on Friday nights. A required minimum spend of $3,000. If your group didn't hit the minimum, the charge didn't disappear. They billed you the difference. And someone at her table had ordered nothing but sparkling water and a salad. I didn't rub it in. I didn't have to, because I saw the moment Steve approached her table with the check holder, watched her open it, and saw the color drain from her face. The way she whipped her gaze toward me, tight, sharp, furious, was worth every sparkler burning at our table. When Ben and I finally walked out into the cool night air, he was still buzzing from the sugar and excitement. He held onto one of the gold-dusted strawberries like it was some kind of prize, and replayed the dessert show moment by moment, barely pausing to breathe. I listened and smiled, but my chest felt heavy. The adrenaline had started to fade, and underneath it all was that strange hollow ache you get after you finally defend yourself. Like the crash after a long sprint. A thought I didn't want to acknowledge started pressing at me. Did I overdo it? I didn't say much on the drive home. Ben fell asleep halfway, still mumbling about chocolate lava waterfalls. But my head kept spinning, not with guilt exactly, more like emotional exhaustion. Standing up to Lauren hadn't magically reset years of imbalance. It didn't erase the history of being the easy-to-ignore sibling, the reliable backup plan, the family's default extra. That night felt powerful, but I knew my family. Nothing would shift in their minds. If anything, they'd probably whisper that I'd acted out, that I'd been dramatic, that I'd made a scene. And maybe the dessert spectacle had been borderline petty. Had I wanted to give Ben a special moment? Or had I wanted to prove a point? That question sat with me for weeks. Lauren didn't reach out. No apology, no check-in, not even a superficial family group text. Nothing. The silence was deliberate. Of course, my mom stepped into the situation the only way she knew how. I heard things got a bit awkward at the restaurant, she said. One afternoon, stretching the word awkward like it hurt her mouth. Awkward, I repeated, trying to stay even. Lauren told us there wasn't space. We ended up eating separately. Well, she said with a practiced, weary sigh. You know how much effort Lauren puts into these things. She tries to make everything perfect for the kids. Maybe you two should have coordinated better. I closed my eyes. There it was, always the same script. Mom, I said quietly. She invited me. She told me when and where. She said nothing about RSVPs or seating limits. I'm just saying, she insisted. Maybe you should have called ahead. She told me I should have called ahead after I got there. A pause. Well, she was probably overwhelmed. And then you heard about the dessert, I added. Another sigh. I'm not blaming anyone, but her tone said otherwise. The call fizzled out soon after. No comfort, no acknowledgement, just the familiar pattern, protecting Lauren's feelings, downplaying mine. That was the moment something clicked in a way it never had before. This wasn't rock bottom because of anything Lauren said or didn't say. It was rock bottom because I kept waiting for people who had never truly valued me to suddenly wake up and treat me differently. I'd spent years folding myself smaller, trimming off pieces of who I was just to make sure I didn't disrupt the verse. Eye on a family they liked best. I'd brushed off the little digs, let the bigger hurts slide, and convinced myself she didn't mean anything by them. But then I looked at Ben, really looked, and realized what message I was sending him every time I let something slide. I didn't want him to believe that love required swallowing disrespect, or that being related to someone obligated you to tolerate their behavior. If I wanted him to understand boundaries, I had to start honoring mine, so I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped responding to the constant stream of messages about Lauren's updates, her kids' events, her latest achievements. I didn't send gifts for the twins' upcoming celebration. I didn't justify my choices or smooth over the silence. I simply stepped back and let the distance form naturally. And in that quiet, something I hadn't expected happened. I exhaled. Really exhaled. For the first time in ages, my emotional bandwidth wasn't being drained by pointless family gymnastics. There were no imaginary rehearsals of what I should have said. No replaying old arguments. There was just room. Enough room to notice how long I'd ignored parts of myself. I'd always been an artist at heart. Drawing, painting, design. But practicality had taken over after the divorce. I worked in IT because it was predictable and safe. Because I needed stability for Ben. But stability and fulfillment weren't the same thing. One night, after he'd gone to sleep, I dug out an old sketchbook that had been shoved behind a stack of bins in the closet. The paper smelled faintly dusty, like a sealed chapter of my own life. I started with a few lazy lines that felt stiff and clumsy, but eventually the old rhythm crept back in. One little doodle became a full-blown drawing, then another, and another. On a whim, I shared a couple pieces anonymously on a Reddit art thread, just to see the respawn. Say floored me. Comments rolled in, genuine interest, real compliments, even a few requests for commissions. I hadn't even considered making money from art again, but suddenly the idea felt possible, even exciting. Each night, after Ben fell asleep, I carved out 2 hours to draw. It wasn't a grind, and it wasn't obligation. It felt like turning the lights back on inside my own head. And Ben caught on quicker than I expected. One morning he glanced up from his cereal and said, "You seem happier lately." It threw me. "Yeah?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "You don't look so tired anymore." I couldn't help smiling. "I've been drawing again." His eyes lit up. "Can you teach me?" That tiny question meant more than any apology from Lauren ever could. From there, everything snowballed in the best way. I made an art Instagram, took a handful of small gigs, pet portraits, logo designs, even a book cover for a self-published writer. It didn't change our finances overnight, but it gave me something that mattered far more, a sense of ownership over my life again. Every Friday became art night. Music on, snacks between pencil strokes, sometimes drawing side by side, sometimes laughing at the wild, imaginative chaos Ben created on the page. Watching him grow more confident made me feel stronger too. Week by week, the resentment dissolved. I no longer needed to get even, I just needed to move forward. But family has a funny way of inserting itself when you least expect it. It started with a birthday invitation, not for Ben, for me. A card arrived in the mail with Lauren's handwriting, neat, perfect, controlled. We're having a small joint celebration for Mom and Kyle. Family only. Dress formal. Please reply. I stared at it for a long stretch of time. No apology, no acknowledgement, not even a half-hearted attempt at conversation. Just an invitation delivered as if we were all still operating you. Enter her rules. And the venue? The exact same restaurant. Same private room. Same Friday night time slot. I almost dropped it straight into the trash. But I know how Lauren's mind works. This wasn't a peace offering, it was a territory marker. An attempt to reset the dynamic on her terms, to pull me back into the old hierarchy where I was expected to nod along quietly and be grateful to be included. But I wasn't the same version of myself anymore. If she expected me to return as the silent sibling, she was about to be disappointed. The card sat on my desk for 3 days, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to arrive with intention. I already knew I was attending, but I wasn't going to be the Kyle they'd spent years shaping. This wasn't just a dinner, it was a deliberate stage Lauren had set. She'd picked the location, the seating, the atmosphere, all to maintain control, and I wasn't stepping back into that. If I showed up, it was going to be as the person I'd become, not the one they remembered. So I picked up the phone and called Steve, the manager. I figured he wouldn't recall me. It had been weeks since the spectacle with the tiered dessert. But the second I mentioned my name and the infamous lava cake tower, he burst out laughing. How could I forget? You're the guy who made my pastry chef cry. In the best way. She talked about that dessert for days. I chuckled. Well, I've got a situation, and I think you might be the perfect person to help. I explained the invitation, the family dynamics, the pattern of control. I didn't embellish, just gave him the truth. He caught on instantly. Let me guess, he said. Private dining room again? Precision head count? Everything choreographed to the minute? Exactly, I replied. I heard typing in the background. Yep, here it is, Friday. Private room reserved for 10. Looks like your mom, Lauren and her husband. The twins, you and Ben, maybe one extra. Tight little circle. My stomach clenched. 10 seats. It was classic Lauren, just enough to seem inclusive, but structured so she remained the one determining who mattered. She positioned herself as the gatekeeper again. I want to do something different, I said. Nothing disruptive, nothing dramatic, just a reminder that I'm not playing the same game anymore. Steve paused. You want a separate table like last time? No, I answered. This time, I want a seat at that table. And that's where everything began. Over the next few days, I began lining up each piece of my plan. Step 1. Show up with someone Lauren would never see coming. She'd always taken little digs at my dating life, tiny barbs disguised as jokes. At gatherings, she'd say things like, Kyle doesn't have time for romance. He's got Ben in his sketchbooks, or, some people are built for marriage, some for single life, and some, well, they just multitask. Those comments used to roll off my back, but this time I had something she couldn't twist. A month earlier I'd started getting to know someone, Marissa. We met through a digital art forum. She worked as a graphic designer a city away, and had this razor-sharp humor paired with a quiet steadiness that felt familiar. We'd only gone on a few dates, but we clicked in a way that felt effortless. She didn't chase attention, she didn't perform, she understood me. So I called her. This might sound completely unhinged, I said, but, would you come with me to a family dinner this Friday? There was a pause. Family dinner, she said slowly, at the restaurant where my sister politely banished me and my son to the outskirts last time. A beat of silence then, now I'm intrigued. It's totally okay if it's too early or too strange. I'll go, she said immediately. Just like that. Step 2, dress intentionally, not overly formal. That was Lauren's standard territory, but polished, self-assured. I pulled out a navy blazer I hadn't worn in years, paired it with a crisp white t-shirt, dark jeans and boots that struck the right balance between casual and powerful. Ben wore a charcoal button-down and chinos. Marissa showed up in a deep burgundy dress that made every soft pastel Lauren adored feel instantly outdated. Step 3. Seize control of the storyline before she could orchestrate anything. Lauren thrived on blindsiding people. She liked to create situations where everyone else played catch-up while she set the pace. So I overturned the pattern. The morning of the dinner, I posted a picture on my art Instagram, just a candid shot of Ben and me sketching at the park. I added a caption. A year ago, I felt stuck in a life that drained me. Tonight I'm celebrating the small wins that helped me rebuild, and the people who made it worth the work. It exploded. A few of my pieces had gone semi-viral lately, so followers were waiting for something personal. Comments flowed in, encouragement, support, congratulations. And because Lauren followed me, I knew she saw it. She even tapped the like button, and the lack of a comment spoke louder than any snide remark she could have typed. Step 4. Arrive fashionably, intentionally late. Lauren adored being the star arrival. the one who swept into the room like a reveal, so I let her have that moment. And then stole the momentum afterward. I called Steve and said, if we show up a few minutes past the hour, could someone escort us in? He laughed. Consider it done. So we walked in exactly 8 minutes behind schedule. A poised hostess met us at the entrance and guided us down the same hallway where things had fallen apart months earlier. Before we even reached the door, I could hear Lauren's voice, too bright, too loud, paired with Paul's monotone stories and my mom asking questions nobody bothered answering. The door swung open, and the whole room froze. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Lauren stopped talking so abruptly it was almost comical. Her gaze bounced between me, Marissa, and Ben. Then a stretched, brittle smile appeared. Oh, Kyle, she said. You made it. We were starting to wonder. I sent a text, I replied smoothly, gently guiding Marissa forward. Traffic was brutal. Her eyes flicked toward Marissa, and the smile slipped a fraction. This is Marissa, I said, a friend of mine. She's also a designer. Marissa offered her hand with perfect composure. Thanks for including me. Lauren shook it. Let go just a little too fast. We, hadn't planned on extra guests. Good thing the reservation is for 10, I said lightly, glancing at the perfectly set table. There were 10 chairs, 3 were still empty. She had no built-in excuse to fall back on. We settled in, Ben beside me, Marissa on my other side. My mother stared like she couldn't decide if she was confused or impressed. Paul raised his glass in my direction, muttering something about the birthday boy finally showing up. Lauren attempted to regain control by redirecting the conversation to safe territory. She rattled off a story about Paul's recent work trip, mentioned the twins' activities, even tossed out a backhanded quip. We thought Kyle was keeping us all in suspense. Typical artistic moodiness. I smiled. I like making an entrance. Must run in the family. Paul stifled a laugh. My mother's eyes dropped to her menu, the air thick with discomfort. Marissa, meanwhile, was effortless. She asked warm, genuine questions. She complimented the twins. She wasn't stiff or showy, just present. And that rattled Lauren far more than anything dramatic would have because Marissa didn't seem intimidated by her. She wasn't trying to impress or outshine. She simply existed with quiet confidence, and that alone threw off the balance Lauren depended on. By the time the appetizers hit the table, Lauren was losing her grip. She suddenly piped up, swirling her wine. Kyle has always been the enigmatic one, the artsy, free-spirited brother. We never know what he's doing, do we? I set my fork down. Actually, I said, I've been illustrating a children's book. Got picked up by a publisher last month. The table fell silent. My mother's eyes lit up. Truly? That's wonderful. I nodded. Yeah, it's about a kid who finds courage by embracing what makes him different. Ben inspired it. Marissa slipped her hand into mine briefly, her smile warm and proud. That's incredible, my mom said. Lauren recovered instantly, plastering on a too-sweet grin. Well, isn't that adorable? Kyle always had a wild imagination. Glad he's finally channeling it. Before I could respond, Ben jumped in with unfiltered enthusiasm. He also has over 30 commissions now, and his art got featured in a magazine. I hadn't coached him. I wasn't even sure he'd been paying attention when those things happened. But the pride in his voice hit me harder than anything else that night. Lauren blinked. Well, I suppose everyone's been keeping busy. I smiled. Some of us more than others, and just like that, the dynamic shifted, not through noise or theatrics, but through presence, confidence, and proof that my life had grown without her permission. I wasn't a supporting character in her carefully crafted family narrative anymore. I had rewritten my role entirely. And the best part? The evening wasn't even close to over. Dessert was still on its way. And with it, the real turning point. The soft clatter of silverware, strained small talk, and the occasional forced chuckle buzzed through the room like static, just waiting for tea. By the time dessert service approached, Lauren's overly bright friendliness had hardened into something brittle. She kept the practiced smile on her face, kept nodding at the right moments, kept pretending to be the gracious hostess she loved to believe she was, but her eyes told the truth. They kept darting toward me, sharp and restless, like she was waiting for me to stumble so she could sweep in and reclaim control. I didn't give her the chance. Since dropping the children's book revelation earlier, I'd barely spoken. Not out of pettiness, my silence simply carried more weight than anything I could have said. Lauren thrived on scripting every interaction, but now I wasn't reading my usual lines. I wasn't offering reactions to feed her performance. I was just there, steady, unbothered, centered, and it was shaking her. When the waiter placed the dessert menus on the table, Lauren straightened, sensing her opening. So, should we share a dessert? Like we did at the twins' birthday? She asked, light and sweet. My mother gave a polite nod. Paul shrugged. The twins, half asleep and sticky from dinner, didn't care. And then Lauren looked directly at me. What do you think, Kyle? I lifted my coffee, met her gaze without flinching. Actually, I said calmly, I already arranged something. She blinked, thrown off balance. You did? I talked to Steve last week, I replied. He put something special together. Before she could gather a response, the lights dipped just slightly, subtle, intentional. A soft wave of surprise rippled across the room. Then the cart rolled in. Two servers pushed it from behind, another walked beside them with a tray of sparkling glasses, and on the cart sat a towering dessert. Not a replica of the birthday one Lauren loved to brag about, but a refined upgrade, an elegant sculpture of white chocolate mousse, golden caramel draped, profiteroles, and dark chocolate shards arranged like wings. Raspberries, dusted with delicate gold powder, caught the warm light. At the very top lay a thin disk of tempered chocolate, engraved in clean white script, to Kyle, for rising quietly but powerfully. A soft chorus of gasps went around the table. Even Paul leaned forward impressed. Ben's eyes lit up. Marissa grinned knowingly. Lauren didn't move. I rose, nodded to the servers, thank you. Then I turned back to my family. I hope no one minds, I said evenly. I just wanted to acknowledge this moment. Lauren's voice finally returned, shaky around the edges. That's quite a gesture. It is, I agreed pleasantly. She forced a laugh. I mean, it's lovely, but don't you think it's a little over the top? This was supposed to be a shared dinner, not your personal celebration. There it was, the simmer beneath the sugar. I nodded, as if considering her point. You're right, I said softly. But for 10 years, every family dinner has revolved around someone else. Someone's big announcement, someone's perfect kids, someone's highlight reel. And I've always sat quietly, supporting everyone, careful not to take up room. Her lips parted to respond, but I continued. This time, I wanted to do something different, not out of spite, just to remind myself, and to remind Ben, that kindness isn't the same as invisibility. Lauren's expression twitched, caught between anger and strategy. I didn't wait for her to choose. Oh, one more thing, I said, setting my cup down. I slipped an envelope from my jacket, thick paper, formal, heavy. I handed it across the table to my mother. She frowned. What's this? A letter from Dad's attorney, I said. About the trust. Lauren went rigid. What trust? My mom opened the envelope. Her eyes widened almost instantly. You see, I said quietly, before Dad died, he set up a trust for all of us. But he worded it very intentionally. I looked directly at my sister. Dad wasn't blind, Mom. He saw the favoritism, the divisions, the way silence was used like a weapon, and he wanted to correct the balance. My mother stared at the page, stunned. He left me the controlling interest, I continued, in the family cabin. The same cabin Lauren has been renting out on Airbnb the last couple of summers. Paul jerked upright. Hold on, what? Yeah, I said. The deed's been in a trust. Lauren only had permission to use it, not own it. I turned back to her. And the trust includes a clause. If a beneficiary behaves in a way that excludes another family member, especially their child, the structure can be changed. Lauren's voice cracked. You're lying. Call the lawyer, I said simply. His number is on the last page. She practically ripped the letter from my mother's hands, scanning it in a panic. Paul hovered over her shoulder, baffled. I stood slowly. I don't want the cabin, Lauren, I said. I don't want your spotlight or your curated moments. But I will protect what's mine, and I will not let my son be treated like a footnote in his own family. The table went silent, fully, completely silent. I took a breath. So here's what's happening. I'm taking over the cabin lease next month. Take it off your Airbnb calendar. I've already notified the management company. Ben and I will be spending part of our summer there, just us, somewhere peaceful, somewhere honest. Lauren looked like she'd swallowed shards of glass. And from now on, I added, we'll decide which family events we attend. If we're invited, I'll assume it's genuine. If not, that's fine too. I turned to my mother. No bitterness, I said softly, but I won't keep showing up just to be someone's scenery. She nodded slowly. Eyes shining. Guilt, realization, maybe both. Beside me, Marissa rose, resting a steady hand between my shoulders. Ben looked up at me, proud in a way that hit me right in the chest. And for the first time that night, I truly smiled. Thanks for dinner. We walked out as dessert was being served. Behind us, that perfect dining room stayed frozen in stunned silence. That was the last family dinner I attended for a long while. But it was the first night I finally felt free, free from Lauren, free from the silent expectations, free from bending myself smaller just to keep the peace. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built something stronger. I'd built myself, and I had shown my son that quiet people don't stay quiet forever.